Good morning. It is really an honor for me to be here. We had a great community event last night at Reno High School. We had lots of media, so I don't know if you were able to see anything on TV last night or this morning. But I did say that Reno is a courageous leader, Washoe County, a courageous leader in the movement to choose love across the country. So it really is my honor to be here speaking with you today. And I wanted to express my gratitude, my sincere gratitude to everyone in here for your courageous leadership, for doing what we know is in the best interest of every child. And, all of us on a daily basis have the opportunity to transform and save lives. In fact, we do that. And so for everything that you do on a daily basis, I just want to thank you. And I'm speaking to you now as a parent. So I have a short video that I'm going to play, and then I'm going to come back up and say a few words. Love those moves. Awesome, Jess. It is August 24th, 2012, and Jess has brand new soccer shoes. So prior to 12/14/2012, I was a single mom with 2 boys. It was kind of an unremarkable life. It was such a great life. I just wanted to be a mom, and I just wanted to be with my kids. Run the ball up to me. One day, you're a mom with 2 boys, 1 boy riding in a car seat in the back seat. So one morning, I'm holding hands with my 6-year-old in his car seat, and the next thing that I know, cut! There is no 6-year-old. He's been murdered. So I had come home for the first time, and I was getting Jesse's clothes for the funeral, and I walked through the kitchen on my way out, and I noticed these 3 words that Jesse had written on the kitchen chalkboard shortly before he died. He wrote, "Nurturing, healing, love." These words were a message of comfort for his family and friends, and inspiration for the world. It's where we needed to turn, and I knew I'd be spending the rest of my life spreading this message. I didn't have to create a solution. There was one available, and it's called social emotional learning. And social emotional learning proactively prevents violence. I believe that Jesse is a part of this organization. I actually believe that he's leading it. And all I have to do is just be present. I live with a tremendous dichotomy in my life every single day. It's never out of my mind why I am leading a worldwide movement to choose love. It's because my 6-year-old son was shot in his 1st grade classroom alongside 19 of his classmates in one of the worst mass murders in U.S. history. I feel like I meet Jesse a lot in schools. I'll look into a child's eyes and I'll see Jesse looking back at me. And how blessed am I? And how grateful I am that my purpose is spreading a message of choosing love, and given to me by my 6-year-old son. So shortly after that, I decided that I was going to be part of the solution to the issues that we're seeing in our society. Following the shooting, there was a lot of blame. Obviously, what happens as human beings when something goes wrong and something happens in our life that we don't like, we always think, whose fault is it? And a lot of the blame went to Adam Lanza and his mom, who armed him. And you know what? That didn't work for me, because I thought if it really was all Adam Lanza and his mother's fault, then the tragedies like this would never have happened before, but we know that they have, and they would never happen again. And we actually have one school-related shooting, and when I say that, I mean a firearm is discharged on school property once a week in our country since Sandy Hook Elementary School. So I used to say, this can't be our new normal. And now I say, well, it is our new normal, but it cannot continue. Schools have to be a safe haven for our students and our educators for learning to take place. And so I love this quote by Nelson Mandela: people must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. The whole movement to choose love actually started at Jesse's funeral when I got up to speak. And I said, everybody's been asking me, what can we do for you? And I said, there is actually something that you can do. This whole tragedy started with an angry thought in Adam Lanza's head. And we know everything starts with a thought in our head, everything. I love Dr. Wayne Dyer's quote. He says, loving people live in a loving world. Hostile people live in a hostile world. Same world. When we're angry, that has started with a thought. When we're joyful, that starts with a thought. So, and the bottom line is, all of us in here have around 50,000 thoughts a day, on average. And science tells us that the vast majority of those thoughts, so between 70 to 80% of our thoughts on a daily basis, are negative. That means angry, non-productive, and don't serve us. Furthermore, over 90% of those 50,000 thoughts are repetitive. So that means same thought we had yesterday, day before, year before, up to 5 years before. So if we know that every thought we have impacts us on a cellular level, it actually impacts us physically, mentally, and emotionally. It's wiring our brain. And we know that the majority of our thoughts are negative on average. It really makes us want to be mindful of what we think about. And I pictured Adam Lanza as a little boy having angry thoughts without the tools or nurturing environment to deal with those thoughts. There is no mass murderer gene, right? Babies aren't born and you go, oh, what a cute baby. Too bad he's going to grow up to be a mass murderer. No, it doesn't happen like that. People come up to me and they say, oh my God, that guy, Adam Lanza, he just snapped. And I say, no, it's never a snap. We like to think as a society that people snap, because then that takes us off the hook. Because what can you do if somebody just snaps? There's no way to prevent that. But in actuality, it's always a long, slow, steady progression of disconnection, isolation, neglect, abuse, anger, suffering that gets somebody to the point where they're going to do something heinous like Adam Lanza. And in fact, I found out about his life. I found out that Adam and his mom had a very similar trajectory to my first son, JT, and I, at the same school, with the same people. I found out that Adam Lanza, the former student of Sandy Hook, the shooter, he actually did everything a young boy is supposed to do. He held up his end of the bargain. He waved red flags, and not like, excuse me, I'm having thoughts of self-harm and harming others. Can you please make an appointment at a psychiatrist at your earliest convenience? Not like that, but he wrote things. He said things. He did things. When he was in 5th grade, he hand wrote a book. And it was not a long book. It was really a story. And he made handwritten copies. It was called The Book of Granny. And in the book, a witch comes to the school with a broomstick. The broomstick opens into a semi-automatic weapon, and she murders children. Right? So he really cried out for help. And when I look at his whole life and all of the pain and suffering, it's really easier for me to be angry for him than it is to be angry at him. And so getting back to the thoughts, that everything starts with a thought in our life. Everything. Our perception of our reality starts in our head with a thought. And guess what? A thought can be changed. It's amazing. We have so much more control over our lives than we think. A thought can be changed. We need to have that awareness, and we have to know how to do it. So I asked everybody on that day to please just start thinking about what you think about and change one angry thought a day, one, into a loving thought. I said, by doing that, you'll make yourself feel better, you'll positively impact those around you, and through the ripple effect, you will make this a more peaceful and loving world, and safer. So about a week later, I started getting feedback from that ask, texting, calls, emails, and everyone said that one simple act completely changed their life. And I knew that I was onto something. And in fact, that was my idea for the Choose Love movement. And then I got educators involved. And then it just exploded. Because this really is a movement that was created by educators for educators. So we all know through the mental health field that this is called the cognitive triangle. I didn't make any of this up. Thoughts impact feelings, which then impact our behavior. And it's called mindfulness, which we've heard about too, which is simply paying attention and focused awareness. So the bottom line is, and this is really the foundation of a program that was written by educators for educators called the Choose Love Enrichment Program that I go around spreading. We can't always choose what happens to us in life. That's the bottom line. Of course, I would never have chosen to have my son murdered in his 1st grade classroom. Sometimes the chapters in our lives are started by somebody else for us. But there is one thing that we always have control over, and we always can choose how we respond in every situation. And I'm not talking about impetuous reactions. I'm talking about thoughtful responses. And in those responses, we can always choose love. So when I decided that I was going to be part of the solution, I started researching what the issues were. And it's not just violence, obviously. You guys are all familiar with these, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with the statistics, although when I say these statistics in different audiences, people are shocked. So let's go through this list really quickly. We have a mental health epidemic, which everyone is aware of. 49.5% of our U.S. youth will have had a diagnosable mental illness by the time they're 18. That statistic jumps up to 60% when they're 21. The majority of that diagnosis is anxiety. We know 70%, around 70% of the kids won't get professional help. And it's so interesting when you look at the long-term outcomes of untreated anxiety. They're exactly what we're seeing in our society. Violence, mental illness, substance abuse, incarceration, depression. Then we have trauma in schools that is increasing. So the ACEs study 20 years ago, groundbreaking research on childhood trauma, found 1 in 5 kids was coming to school traumatized. Today, we know through recent research that that number is over 50%. Over 50% of kids are coming to school having had a recent traumatic exposure. And keep in mind, that can be anything from yelling and screaming at home to the unthinkable. Then we have bullying. Bullying according to the National Center for Education Statistics, has increased by 21% since we started tracking it in 2003. That's overall, has increased. And we know that we have more suicides than murders in the US. We know substance abuse is skyrocketing. Last year we had more deaths from drug overdoses than ever before, around 60,000. That number is expected to increase over the next 5 years. Drugs now kill more people than cars and guns combined for the first time. And I talked about violence. So this is all continuing. This isn't a new list of issues. This is a current list of issues that continues to escalate. And I asked myself, why? Because we're all human beings, and nobody, regardless of what political party you're on or what your personal beliefs are, it doesn't matter. Nobody wants these things to happen. Nobody wants suffering. We're all doing our best to make sure that this list decreases. Why does it continue to escalate? And I have my theory, which I'm going to share with you. So we know we have a negative bias as a society. We focus on the negative in our personal lives, in our work lives, and as a society. We can prove that to you by going on the news and what is reported on the news, right? Some of the non-academic programming that we see in other schools is focused on the negative. What happens when you focus on a negative? It grows. Like, let's go back to caveman times, or let's say cave woman, since I'm a woman, and let's picture a cave woman sitting outside a cave, totally zenned out, meditating. Okay, then we have another cave woman on the other side of the cave, and she is scanning for a saber-toothed tiger. Who's going to pass down their genes? Any guesses? Saber-toothed tiger scanner. Absolutely. The other guy's going to get eaten, right? If you ask kids, they go, meditator. But we know it's a scanner. And we still have a lot of that scanning mentality in our lives and elsewhere as well. We have a negative bias. That's how we've passed down our genes. But we don't have saber-toothed tigers. We do have things we have to be aware of, but our world has changed a little bit, and we need to be more focused on proactive prevention. And I know I'm speaking to the choir, which is really, really nice because you guys are focused on this. But proactive prevention is really the opposite of having a negative bias. And I want to give one more example to prove this to you. So who here has never heard of PTSD? You've never heard of it. You need to be taken outside and told about it. You've never heard of PTSD. Do I have to say what it is? I can only say the acronym, and you guys all know what it is. So that's interesting because, not because, now you guys should know what it is, but it doesn't matter what audience I'm talking to at all. And I talk to every single audience you could possibly imagine. Everyone's heard of PTSD. Everyone. I never have to say what it means. Everyone's heard of it. But when you Google and you look at the research behind PTSD, 7% of the population will suffer from PTSD at one point in their life. 7% of the total population. Now I'm going to ask you another question. Who here has heard of PTG? 2 people. It's always 1 or 2 people. So post-traumatic growth is a thing. It's been scientifically researched, just like PTSD. Post-traumatic growth is actually when we grow through trauma. Think about how we're shaped and molded as human beings. Is it through the good times, having birthday parties, getting all the gifts you want, surrounded by family and friends? No. It is through difficulty. It's through obstacles. It is even through pain and suffering. That's how we're shaped and molded as human beings. And that's post-traumatic growth. That is when we find strength we never knew we had. It's when we strengthen relationships, weed out weak ones, gain a new perspective, find meaning in our suffering, deepen our spirituality, find a purpose in life. So many different benefits to post-traumatic growth, but nobody's ever heard of it. Why? Because we're too busy going, okay, PTSD. All right, let's see. That might be, let me write it on an index card and file it up here in case I ever need it, because that's something that might harm me. But my only point in this is that we need to start focusing on positive things as well, proactive and preventative things. Really important, and you're probably all thinking, well, I never knew what it was and I'm fine, and I've made it this far. But here's the thing. Harvard University came out with a study in 2007 by Ellen Langer called the Hotel Maid Study. Has anybody heard of that? So so interesting. She took 2 groups of hotel maids from 2 different locations, brought them into a research center, gave them a thorough physical, and then split them back into their 2 separate locations. She made one group mindfully aware of the benefits of being a hotel maid. You're a hotel maid. By definition, you're active in your job. When you're active in your job, you have better heart health, better cardiovascular health, you lose weight, you have better moods. She told nothing to the control group. Sent them back out to their 2 separate locations for 2 months. Brought them back into the same research center, gave them the physical. Lo and behold, the maids that had been made mindfully aware of the benefits of being a hotel maid, just verbally told, experienced those benefits exponentially more than the control group. What's the takeaway? We need to be aware of the benefits of good things in our lives, and then we experience them on an exponential level. I love this quote by Helen Keller. Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experiences of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, vision cleared, ambition inspired, and success achieved. Isn't that good news? Since we all have difficulty in our life and there's so much trauma for kids, let's shape it in a different way for them. Opportunities for growth. Let's plant the seed of PTG in kids' heads, this seed of awareness. Hey, and not when they're going through it, but before. Look, you're going to face obstacles, and when you do, those are opportunities for growth. You're going to learn lessons in those times. You know, when I was waiting at the firehouse to see if Jesse was coming back for hours, and when it looked like it wasn't going to turn out well, my first thought was, oh my God, I'm going to be suffering from PTSD. And what do you do as a human being? Fear, worst case scenario, right? And I thought, oh my God, how's that going to manifest in me? I'm probably going to be institutionalized, and who is going to take care of my surviving son? What if I had had the seed of PTG planted in my head? What if I had had an awareness of that? It wouldn't have taken away the pain and suffering, because I think at 49 years old, that's there to shape and mold us into the human beings that we're supposed to become. But I do think it would have taken away some of the fear, and I would have started thinking in a more positive way quicker. So I'll tell you a really difficult time for me. After Sandy Hook, I think we all watched that in horror, and I think we thought, oh, God, thank God that doesn't happen to, that happens to other people, but not to me. That doesn't happen to my kids, but God, that's horrible. And you know what? Whoever they is, the they with the capital T, they that come in that fix things and everything, they're going to take care of this, because this can't go on in our civilized society, obviously, right? I mean, people aren't going to let this go on. This can't be our new way of life. They're going to fix this. So I'm just going to let them, and I'm going to go on, because this can't keep happening. And then I think Parkland happened, and I really think that shook us up, because I think we realized there is no they with a capital T. I was actually at the Dorothy Lemelson School, and I held a parent community night, and I'm saying the same thing. And I always ask, and I'll ask this, so I'm giving you a spoiler: who's going to fix that long list of problems? So one of the parents, one of the fathers, I think he was trying to be kind of a smart aleck or funny, but he goes, Mary Poppins. And I said, you know what, that's a really good point. There is no Mary Poppins that comes in with the umbrella to fix everything and then goes. We all have to take responsibility for what's going on with our children in our society. So I don't have a TV because I always practice being present and mindfully aware of being with my kids. I didn't want TV as a distraction. And so I watched it a little bit after Sandy Hook, but then I really didn't watch it again until after Parkland. And I was over at my mom's, and the TV was on, and it just struck me that, oh my God, 5 years later, we're having the same exact conversation and no action. Nothing's changed. And then I saw those kids get up, and the kids, like, they're looking around going, okay, if nobody's going to do anything to keep us safe, we're going to do it. And you know what? For the first time, not in my life, but since Sandy Hook, I felt shame. I felt a deep sense of shame. Even though I spend almost 24 hours a day trying to be part of the solution. And I really had a hard time, like, how can we be talking about the same things 5 years later with no action? How can that be? How can that be? So my therapist, I have a good therapist, ran me through this little exercise that I want to run you through. And I think that it was really opened my eyes. I thought it was really interesting, and it taught me a lot about myself and our society. So I'm going to run you through it right now really quickly. I want you to all think about a problem. Think about a problem that you're currently having in your life. You can write it down if you want, because you have paper and pen, or you can just think about it in your head. Think about a problem that any problem that you're having. And if you can't think of one, I have a long list of my own personal problems that I can offer you, but I will refuse to take it back. Okay, so does everybody have your problem? Probably not that difficult to think of one, right? Okay, now you can either write it down or mentally list 3 to 5 thoughts and feelings about that problem in your head. Do the exercise, because it's pretty cool. 3 to 5 thoughts and feelings about that problem. Do you guys have your thoughts and feelings? Okay, everybody have their thoughts and feelings? Okay, now I want you to take either your mental pen or your physical pen, and I want you to circle the thoughts and feelings that are about a solution. Some laughs, some smiles, none of them, right? That was so interesting, and it explained a lot to me. None of them are about a solution, because that's not how we're used to thinking. So that explained to me why we continue to talk. No one is addressing the cause of what's going on in our society on the news. No one's talking about an actual solution. They're talking about the effects that happen to be political agendas on both sides, but nobody's actually talking about the cause. It was so interesting to me. And we need to start focusing on the solutions. And again, I'm speaking to the choir because you guys are. Obviously, I'm getting to the fact that the solution is social-emotional learning. But when you think about who's going to fix it, we all do have to take responsibility. The cause of what we're experiencing, a lot of it in our society, is disconnection. I know connection has been a theme today. Disconnection, isolation, lack of resilience, lack of ability to manage emotions, lack of ability to manage conflict in our lives. The solution is teaching kids how to have those skills and tools, how to have healthy and positive relationships, how to have deep, meaningful connections, how to identify, label, manage, and express emotions. Skills and tools for resilience. Guess what? Just like there's no mass murder gene, there is no SEL gene. There is no social and emotional intelligence gene. Guess what? If we didn't learn these skills and tools, and we didn't have a fabulous role model, we don't have them. And I can say that because when I started to research them, I realized I don't have these skills and tools. And I've learned them over the past 5 years, and my life has become exponentially better because of it. So I've had this slide, by the way, for 5 years, but I haven't really wanted to talk too much about school safety because when I walk in, people get afraid. They start thinking about worst case scenarios. Sometimes they don't even want to hear me speak because it's too hard. So I haven't harped on school safety. However, now that I'm on the Federal School Safety Commission, it's really important that social emotional learning be considered as part of school safety. So we have external safety measures that everybody's talking about. Those are arming or not arming school resource officers, single point entries, bulletproof film that people are putting on glass, safety protocols, all of those things, right? Very important, unfortunately, very important. But none of those will prevent a child from wanting to come in and harm an educator, who's the usual target, or another student. None of that will prevent that. The only thing, I know you're not supposed to deal in extremes, but the only thing that will do that is social emotional learning. That's cultivating safety from the inside out. Kids that are connected, kids that have healthy relationships, kids that can manage their emotions, we know they won't want to harm one another. We know there's science behind that, but it also makes sense. It also makes logical sense. Last night, actually, in the line of people that wanted to meet me after I spoke, there was the mom of the girl in the shooting that happened here in 2013. This girl was actually standing right next to the shooter when he killed an educator and a student, I believe. And the shooter said to the girl, "Get down, I don't want to hurt you." Why did he say that? Because they were connected. They had a connection. They had a relationship. I thought that was really interesting. And we're all connected, by the way. We feel like we're different from one another. I know kids do, but we're all the same in many, many ways, especially in the want and need to love and be loved. We all have that basic need, all of us. Doesn't matter where we live. It doesn't even matter how old we are. From little babies all the way to on the deathbed, we all have a want and need to love and be loved. And actually, a lot of the things that we're seeing in our society at their very core are simply lack of love. We're wired to connect. We have mirror neurons in our brains. We're constantly pinging off one another. However, we have to learn how to do that in a deep and meaningful, healthy and positive way. Harvard University, again, did a 75-year longitudinal study. That means that they took data points all the way, different people, same survey. They wanted to know what is the secret to happiness. By the way, happiness is also something that connects us all as human beings. We all just want to be happy. And what is the secret to happiness per a 75-year longitudinal study? It is positive relationships, deep and meaningful connection. The secret to happiness. Guess what? We have to learn how to have those. We're not born with those skills and tools. It's so interesting, and that's what social emotional learning gives us. So I was at a school counseling conference over last summer in Arkansas, and our keynote speaker was an FBI director of drug enforcement, which I thought was interesting. So he gets up there and he goes, "I'm here today to tell you we're losing the war on drugs." He said, "We realize we can't arrest our way out of this problem." And he started to go into like how bad it really is and how they're using different mixing agents and how one of his officers went to an overdose scene and he got a drop of fentanyl on his uniform. This was in the news. And he took his bare hand to brush it off, and he overdosed within minutes, and it took 3 doses of Narcan to bring him back. He said, and then as soon as we get onto a name and we understand the chemical composition, then they tweak it and change it. And then we're back to where we started from, trying to move forward. And he said, that's why I'm here, because we're reaching out to you and we're asking you for help. And I thought, oh my God, you're the FBI. Is that all you have? School counselors are really powerful, don't get me wrong, but yikes. But then his counterpart got up and said something that blew me away. She said, the opposite of addiction is connection, and connection is love. And I thought, wow, now they're speaking my language. I understand that language. I learned that connection is love through little kids. Because I talk to students, and I love to talk to really young students and at-risk students. But I usually ask them, hey guys, what does anger feel like in your body? And they go, blah, headache, inferno, fire, stomach ache. And then I say, what does love look like? And they've been brought into an auditorium. They're not necessarily sitting next to their best friend, but they immediately, without thinking, go. Or if they're sitting across from tables like this, they go. Trying to connect, right? And I learned from them that love is connection. Interesting that the opposite of addiction is connection, and connection is love. And we can facilitate that connection through social and emotional learning. So I wondered why every child didn't have this. When we have decades of research, we know that this is actually a proactive, preventative approach to mental health. It reduces and prevents mental health issues of all kinds. It reduces and prevents substance abuse. It reduces and prevents violence, incarceration, even divorce rates. See, I told you I could have used it. And so I spoke with educators, and they created a program that transcends all of the barriers that we found to getting social emotional learning to kids. One of them was cost, of course. And so we made our program, we offer our program at no cost. I have been saying free, but one of my private funders said, don't ever say free. Say no cost, because it's not free to us. But they believe so much in the benefit per individual child and for our society at large that they're willing to fund this and offer it to schools at no cost. Only program written by educators for educators, and we included the best of what is statistically effective and being taught in classrooms today. Not just SEL. Positive psychology, mindfulness, growth mindset, neuroscience, emotional intelligence, character education. I'm pretty sure we're the only program with a PTG base, because nobody's heard of it. We made it easy to teach, easy to learn. It's flexible, takes very little time to teach, actually. We aligned it with the American School Counselor Association Mindsets and Behaviors, which is interesting because a third of our users are actually school counselors in schools where they don't have comprehensive formal SEL programs. It's the school counselor's responsibility to go in and teach this. So they usually just kind of pick and choose from what they have, and we made it a lot of fun. We also have an at-home program. This is, when I found out that trauma in kids could be yelling and screaming at home, that honestly hit me like a ton of bricks, because I yell and scream at home. I mean, I'm not a yeller and a screamer, but I've done it. And if I had the awareness that that was traumatizing my children, it's not like I would never have done it, but I would have thought twice before doing it. And I realized, in fact, I thought, my God, I've made a horrible mistake. I shouldn't have started in schools. I should have started with parents. So we put together with Dr. Chris Cook, who wrote the proprietary neuroscience and is also the author of The Compassionate Achiever, as well as his wife, who's a certified positive discipline family trainer. We put this free video series together for parents, and it corresponds with the social emotional learning that they're learning in the classroom. SEL for parents. So actually in the last less than 2 years, the program is now being taught in all 50 states, and it's been downloaded in over 55 countries. That's by word of mouth, which is pretty amazing. Obviously, there's a want and need for social emotional learning, and also the concept of choosing love, because of course we're all united in the want and need to love and be loved. So now I just want to quickly go through the formula. This is a skill and tool that I want you all to walk away with and have in your tool belt so you can use it on a daily basis with yourselves and in your kids. This formula will lead you to choosing love in any situation or circumstance in your life. I've been all over the world. I've taught this formula. No one's ever said, excuse me, I have a situation where it won't work. So we'll go through it really quickly. And it's based off the nurturing, healing, love message that Jesse left on the kitchen chalkboard. Those 3 words are actually in the definition of compassion across all cultures. And when you break down the meaning of each of the words, they form the formula for choosing love. So we start with courage, because courage is what underlies everything. And by the way, when I talk to kids even, I say, I'm not talking to you as an adult, talking to a child. I'm talking to you as a human being, talking to another human being, because we're all the same. All the issues that our kids struggle with, we struggle with, right? Belonging, we struggle with that. Feeling good, we struggle with that. Managing our emotions, we struggle with that every single day. Doing the right thing, telling the truth, being kind to somebody who's not being kind to us, being grateful when things aren't going our way, forgiving when the person who hurt us isn't sorry, and then stepping outside of our own circle, our own stuff that's going on, our own life, and helping others. That all takes courage. Courage is a muscle. We have to practice it. And of course, I talk about Jesse's courage. Jesse, when the gunman came into his room, stood up to him, trying to protect his teacher. And the gunman actually killed his teacher, and then the gun ran out of bullets. And while the gunman changed his clip, which was taped together, Jesse, sensing the delay, told his classmates to run. And he was able to save 9 classmates' lives. They said it was because Jesse said to run. Jesse's actually in 2 of the active shooter training slides that are being taught across the country because of his bravery at 6 years old. But I talk about that because that's the courage we all have. He was a 6-year-old little boy. We all have that courage within us. We just have to be aware of it, and we have to practice it on a daily basis, because courage is a muscle. And there's so many scientific benefits to being courageous. By the way, one of them, a research showing that when we have the courage to stand up to bullying behavior, by the way, not just kids, adults too, that behavior stops within 10 seconds. And we've seen that to work. So second character value is gratitude. Gratitude is mindful thankfulness and the ability to be thankful even when things in life are challenging. I'm at a 100% free and reduced lunch school the other day. This is in Connecticut. They actually feed the kids breakfast, lunch, and dinner and then send them home with food over the weekend because they don't have food at home. And I'm looking over this second grader's shoulder. He's working on his gratitude list. They're choosing love in the school. And he's saying, I'm grateful for having a house when I'm not with my parents and for having foster parents. Number 2, I'm thankful to eat every day. I snapped that picture and sent it to my team because I said, no one would blame this kid for being angry and belligerent, but he's not. He's focusing on what he has. He's going to be okay. Clearly, he has stuff going on. Look at all the scientifically researched benefits of practicing gratitude in your own life. Look what they all lead to: greater happiness. It's what connects us all as human beings. Let's talk about forgiveness just really quickly, because I have gotten a lot of attention for my decision to forgive Adam Lanza. And when I wanted to include forgiveness in the program, I got a lot of people saying, oh, forgiveness? That is such a lofty concept. I don't think kids are going to get it. And you know what's funny? Kids totally get it. We don't. We don't get it. But kids totally get it. In fact, I was just out in California talking to an auditorium filled with kindergartners through 5th graders, and I talked about the formula, and then I said, okay, last 10 minutes, you guys come up and you talk about which character value you practice most. I'm thinking they're going to go, I'm courageous, or I help my friend. What do they talk? 9 out of 10 talk about forgiveness, right? And forgiveness, we know through research. This is all science now, guys. Decades of research behind the benefits of forgiving for you. Forgiveness is the key to resilience. We know that. And we know that basically, I didn't go over the definition because I have a new and improved one, taking your personal power back. Taking your personal power back. So it would seem almost insane, wouldn't it, if I allowed the man, the troubled, angry, suffering man who murdered my son, to have control over my thoughts, which impact my feelings, which then impact my behavior. And the way that I took my personal power back was basically cutting the cord that attached me to pain. This actually happens to be a lesson in our program now. I felt like I was attached to the shooter by a cord where all my personal power drained out of me in the form of anger through a cord into the shooter, and I was dragging him around with me everywhere because I was giving him control over my thoughts, which impact my feelings, which impact my behavior. Forgiveness was a big set of scissors. It was a choice. I took those scissors and I cut that cord that attached me to pain. All my personal power ran back into me, and it felt so good. But then I talk about Jesse's 7th birthday, which happened 6 months later, June 30th. I got up that morning. I was angry. What happened? What? My son should be here celebrating his 7th birthday? What happened? So does that mean that I failed in my forgiveness? No. It just means I had to take a step back, take a deep breath, and forgive again. Forgiveness starts with a choice, then it becomes a process. It might be something that we have to do for the rest of our lives, but it gives us our personal power back. I love this quote. If you knew everyone's story, you would love them. You can't really hate anyone if you know everything that happened to them between their birth and now, why they became the way they became, why they have walls up or down. If you truly know someone, you'd get it. And that includes Adam Lanza. The last character value is compassion in action. Compassion in action has an identifying component. It's the latest neuroscience that we don't have to actually feel someone else's pain. We can identify with it. And then it's the action component, actively doing something to help ease that pain. The best example of this is Jesse's older brother. He was 12 years old when his little brother was murdered, and he didn't want to go back to school. And by the way, I didn't want him to go back to school. When I would go in the morning and ask him if you want to go, he would say no. I'd feel relief. We never heard from the school. But this incredible experience happened where orphan genocide survivors reached out to JT about a month after the tragedy and said, JT, we heard about what happened all the way over here in Rwanda. We just wanted to let you know that you're going to be okay and you're going to feel joy again. Well, that was groundbreaking to me because they were the first people with credibility that had been through something worse that actually were telling us we were going to be okay. So they started describing how they got through. These are orphans. They saw their parents being murdered. Some of them were buried in shallow graves with the bodies of their family members. Heinous, heinous. And they reached safety, and they said, and I didn't put it together until later, the same formula for choosing love. They said they felt gratitude when they got to safety. They realized they had to forgive because they knew if they didn't, they'd go down the same path of anger and destruction that the killers, they called them, had. And then they found meaning in their suffering by sharing their story with other people like they were doing with JT. JT turned around the next day and went back to school and started an organization called Newtown Helps Rwanda, started selling these bands, and actually 2 months later was able to Skype back. He said, I'll never forget this, Mom. Those kids reached out to me in love, and I'm going to reach back out to them. I'm going to raise money to send them to school. I'm watching this, and he not only did that, but he built self-sustaining fish ponds for former children soldiers. He's been doing this now for 5 years. And I thought, and if I told him to do it, he wouldn't. So why? Why does he keep doing this? Now, JT won't see a therapist, long story, can't take medication, but I watch as JT is healing himself by doing for others. It is the most powerful form of therapy, trauma treatment, healing agent I've ever seen. And there's science behind that. When we do for others, we do for ourselves. It's absolutely incredible. In fact, JT at 17 has already graduated from high school, and he's actually in Washington, D.C. right now advocating for school safety and being interviewed. So does the Choose Love formula work for everyone in every circumstance? I'm wrapping up here. I said initially that it did, and so I was invited to send my book up to convicted felons shortly after its release, and they were going to read it, and then I was going to go up and talk to them about it. And I'm like thinking to myself, no convicted felon is going to read a book called Nurturing Healing Love. But I don't mind donating it because maybe the family will, maybe the guards will. It'll help in some way. And of course I want to go up and talk to them about it. I took JT because he had the day off. He doesn't look particularly thrilled. He wasn't. But it turned out to be an incredible day for both of us. And actually when we got up there, they'd not only read it, but they underlined it, highlighted it, dog-eared it, and rewrote passages. And it was incredible. They said to me, all we ever knew was anger, hatred, and revenge. You hurt me, and I'm going to hurt you and those that you love even worse. This concept, this empowering concept that they can choose love for themselves over anger and hatred was mind-blowing to them. They couldn't believe it. It opened up a whole new world for them. And I will let them tell you in a short clip what it meant.
I just want you to choose love instead of revenge.
It amazed me in the discussion we had how many people, just because of your story and your message, were rethinking the behaviors they've done. And not just rethinking the behaviors they've done, but literally coming up and saying, maybe I'm not going to behave this way going forward. And I thought that was one of the most powerful things, because some of us in here have legitimate street credentials, and these are people who you maybe saved lives, literally multiple lives. And I think just your message and you coming here, before you got here, you had done that. Now with you being here, we're all rethinking something in our lives. And I want to thank you for that as well.
You guys are my Choose Love movement ambassadors, if you want to be. Seriously, you know? I mean, that's what I want. That's my goal.
And actually, the filmmaker from the BBC that filmed that, he didn't believe that those guys would change on a dime like that. He went back a couple months later, re-interviewed the ones that were the most outspoken, and said, so nothing in your life changed. You went back to your cell. Are you still choosing love? And all of them said yes. Why? Anger, hatred, and revenge feels bad. Choosing love feels good. And basically, we're all moving towards feeling good in one way or another every single day. And choosing love can get us to that. So we all know the starfish story. I'm wrapping up now. You know, the little boy that's walking along and he's throwing starfish back in. And the old man from the other side is coming up and saying, what are you doing? Well, these starfish, they're going to die unless I throw them in. And the old man says, I just came from the other way. There are tens of thousands of starfish. There's no way you're ever going to make a difference. And the little boy bends down, picks up another starfish, throws it out into the water and says, I made a difference to that one. And that's what you guys are all doing every single day on a daily basis. Never forget the individual starfishes that you are saving. And Jesse left a message for his older brother on his desk. It was a little piece of paper folded up. This was a final message from a little brother to a big brother, which is beautiful. Jesse was bouncing off the walls with fun, always happy, always having a good time. JT was traumatized early on in his life. He's kind of a kid that faces you like this, and he needs to be grabbed and tickled to get him to laugh. So this was beautiful from a little brother to a big brother, but it's also for us, when you think about the two most important things we do on a daily basis, it's choosing love in all of our choices, because really at its very base, we're either choosing love or choosing fear, and the outcomes look vastly different, and having a lot of fun. Our kids want to have a lot of fun. We want to have a lot of fun. I want to have a lot of fun. So I want to leave you with that, and also invite you to join the movement to choose love. We all know this quote, but I love it. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And thank you very much. Thank you for choosing love. Thank you.